Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Kelvin passed along a story to me out of Oregon. Thank you very much, sir. Andrew Selsky wrote the article. Jury sides with Oregon counties in timber revenue lawsuit. But wait till you hear the number. Out of Oregon, 14 counties claimed Oregon deprived them of revenue for decades by limiting logging. And they won a $1 billion lawsuit against the state recently. $1 billion. The 4-week trial is focused on 3 words: greatest permanent value, and what they meant when the phrase was written into law 80 years ago. Lawyers for the counties said it meant maximizing revenue from logging. Attorneys for the state argued that it included other factors such as recreation and habitat, and they accused counties of wanting clear cutting of forests and of not caring about endangered species. Deputy Attorney General Fred Boss said he was disappointed by the verdict. He said the state plans to appeal rather than paying $1 billion. The law stemmed from a time a century ago when private companies clear-cut forests. Instead of paying taxes, the companies left counties to deal with the land in a practice known as cut and run. The counties didn't have the resources to restore the land, so during his 1939 inaugural address, Governor Charles Sprague urged the legislature to pass a bill allowing the state to designate the land as state forests, grow back the trees, and manage the land to secure the greatest permanent value and share revenue with the counties. The law enabled the state to adopt about 1,000 square miles, roughly the size of Rhode Island, from 15 counties that received 64% of the logging revenues. One of the counties declined to join the lawsuit. The counties claim the state breached the contract in 1998 when it adopted a rule defining greatest permanent value to mean healthy, productive, and sustainable forest ecosystems that provide a social, economic, and environmental benefit to the people of Oregon. Their lawsuit sought $674 million in lost revenue since 2001 and $392 million in future damages through 2069. Attorneys for the counties made it clear they want the trees treated as a commodity to be exploited. Timber is like a crop of wheat, except for a longer growing season. Isn't that right? John DiLorenzo, a Portland attorney hired by the plaintiffs, asked one witness at the trial. He also noted that smaller timber harvests mean fewer jobs in logging, milling, transportation, and other services. Scott Kaplan, an attorney for the state, declared that the county's vision of greatest permanent value is turning Oregon into a tree farm from the Cascades to the Pacific. So those are the two sides. The counties have actually seen revenue from timber harvest increase since 1998, totaling $86 million in 2019. Witnesses at the jury trial included a history professor, retired foresters, and others who have trooped into the Linn County courtroom. The lawsuit was initiated by the Oregon Forest and Industries Council trade group and 2 companies that buy timber. The Oregonian newspaper reported this, citing court documents. Mills have been closing across the state for years. In the 1970s, annual Oregon timber harvests totaled more than 8 billion board feet and employed 80,000 workers at wages 30% above the statewide average, according to the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis. Annual harvests are now under 4 billion board feet, with direct industry employment at about 30,000, and the average wage equal to statewide average. So the number of jobs is dropping and the pay is dropping, according to this. The biggest driver behind the decline is logging on federal lands being down nearly 90%, according to the 2017 study. Around half of Oregon is federally owned land. So Andrew Selsky wrote the article, and the real takeaway here is, they're fighting over what is the best use of this land, or how do we maximize or get the greatest permanent value from the land, because that's what apparently the law requires in Oregon. And a jury has said, well, it looks to us like the state is not doing its job to the tune of $1 billion. And it's always interesting because we often see lawsuits with big numbers like that where a jury will award like a single person $1 billion because they got horribly injured or disfigured or went through some very, very painful thing. And you say, well, in a case like that, it's going to get struck down. But in a case like this, where somebody can blackboard or whiteboard, actually put up numbers and say, look, this is the money that's been lost. And our argument is that if we're entitled to this number equals $1 billion. It might not get struck down the same way you see large awards get struck down. Especially, and it's not clear from this article, if the $1 billion is purely considered lost revenue versus any damages, like punitive damages, okay? Because if I can blackboard and show actual damages of $1 billion, you can't strike it down and say, well, the jury was wrong and awarded more than they should. Numbers are numbers. Whether it's $1, $10, or $1 billion, if I can show these actual numbers where the numbers came from, then the jury didn't abuse its discretion. But if somebody gets in the stand and goes, look, I was in a lot of pain, I want $1 trillion, and the jury goes, we'll give you $1 trillion. A court's going to look at that and go, well, the jury had discretion to award what they thought was appropriate, and $1 trillion is not appropriate. But actual mathematical numbers, actual damages, if that's $1 billion, there might be an issue here trying to raise $1 billion. So I suspect, again, this is me breaking up the crystal ball, which I do from time to time, that what is most likely going to happen here would be that somebody would say, you know something, we can't really cut you a check for $1 billion because we haven't got it laying around. How about we work out some kind of deal where we will change the way we do these things in the future, and somehow, can't make it up to you, I guess, but we can at least make this stuff more available, and perhaps use that, if not to eliminate the $1 billion that's owed, maybe to make it smaller, make the number smaller. That's a possibility. The crystal ball is a little cloudy on the magic 8 ball is cloudy on this one. Okay, so I'm not sure, but again, it'll be interesting because it will go up on appeal. Any 9-digit award will go up on appeal because it's worth doing that. A bigger question is whether or not somebody'd have to post a bond to take this up on appeal. I suspect the state doesn't have to. But if a person was on the hook for $1 billion and had to post a bond for $1 billion, you can imagine that would be a problem. So I will continue to follow this suit, and the people of Oregon who follow it also, please send me updates, because if people like Kelvin didn't pass this along, I wouldn't necessarily have caught it right away. And Kelvin catches my eye because he spells it Kel, like the temperature, Kelvin. But also Lord Kelvin, who was a guy from jolly old England back in the day. I wrote a paper on the history of the technology behind radio waves and radio broadcasting, and when radio was first being developed by people like Hertz and Marconi and so on. Somebody asked Lord Kelvin what he thought of that newfangled radio, and he expressed a little dismay, but he was a man of science, so he should know a little bit about it. And they said, well, you understand that they tell us that pretty soon they'll be able to communicate and send messages through the airwaves using the wonders of radio. And Lord Kelvin remarked, and I'm paraphrasing, radio, I'd rather send my messages with a boy on a pony. A boy on a pony. And I think it's a quaint thought, but I think radio actually did come along and become viable. So there you go. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Lehto's Law.